we're skipping a few things here. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. I know we'll be a little later today. It's okay. You guys are flexible, and I appreciate that. We've been on this subject of wisdom. It's our theme for the year. And we defined wisdom a few weeks ago as just being able to deal with the complexities of life, of which there are many, and we just witnessed one right in front of us. It's knowing the right thing to do in the vast majority of life situations when there's not a rule that applies, a biblical scripture, or even morality that applies, and when there's multiple permissible outcomes. How do you make sense of all of that? Wisdom is needed. It's kind of interesting when you think about us as religious communities, we tend to like to make new rules. And one of the reasons we got to ask ourselves the question, why do we like to make new rules? Well, we like to make rules because we don't like to think. We want a rule to cover every single situation so we don't have to apply wisdom and think through and think out the implications. But the truth is you can never create enough rules for life to cover everything. So you need wisdom. And that's why we're spending the whole year talking about wisdom, developing it, seeking it, growing in it. And in our current series, we've been looking at wisdom nearly exclusively in one of the 5 great wisdom books of the Bible, Proverbs, right? And so here are the Proverbs we're going to tackle today. Let me, as I have the last several weeks, read those for us, and then we're going to go back and dig into them. A patient man has great understanding, but a quick-tempered man displays folly. A tranquil heart is life to the body, but passion is rottenness to the bones. That's in the NASB. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. A hot-tempered man stirs up dissension, but a patient man calms a quarrel. He who is slow to anger is better than a warrior, and he who controls his temper is greater than one who captures a city. It's the Berean Standard Version. A man's wisdom gives him patience. It is to his glory to overlook an offense. A hot-tempered man must pay the penalty. If you rescue him, you will have to do it again. Do not testify against your neighbor without cause or use your lips to deceive. Do not say, I'll do to him as he has done to me. That's what I felt yesterday when I got to it now. I'll pay that man back for what he did. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. So today we come to one of the major themes, interestingly enough, of the book of Proverbs, which is if you're going to live a wise life, you're going to have a heart that discerns and understands and processes well anger. You need to be able to control and understand and handle not only anger in yourself, but anger in other people as well. So we're going to try and unpack a few things today that I think will help you and me be more wise in this area. First thing about anger, the hazards of anger. The hazards of anger. This one is probably the one we most naturally will relate to today. It can be dangerous. We know that anger can be an explosive. It can be like this dynamite to the soul. And as a result, anger has the power to do what? Disintegrate things, pulverize things, just like an explosive would. One of the things it destroys is your body. That's what we read, Proverbs 14:29. A quick-tempered man displays folly. A tranquil heart is life to the body, but passion brings rottenness to the bones. All kinds of research shows that anger is far worse on your body, far worse on your heart than anxiety, than sorrow, than nearly really any other emotion. It's harder, can be harder on your heart even than physical exertion, harder in all the wrong ways. Nothing sets you up for heart disease, stress-induced body complications. Nothing rots your bones or disintegrates your body like anger can. Secondly, anger not only disintegrates the body, but Proverbs 15:18, it can disintegrate your community. It says in this verse, a hot-tempered man stirs up dissensions that can wreck a community. When you get angry, you throw words around like weapons, and they have enormous amount of damaging power, not only to yourself, but to those around you, wounding those around you. They wound relationships. They can destroy relationships. Sometimes you'll never get those back. Maybe for this pre-Easter season, some of you gave up, or perhaps you're still following, some Lent practices. Maybe that's something you did or an earlier portion of your life, but you know how to fast, give up things for 40 days, often it's food. But how about considering a fast from things that stoke unhealthy anger in you? Fasting from things that only serve to fortify your own echo chamber while just creating tension and dissension and disagreement with others. Think social media. Think politics. Think news. And maybe just fast from all that, because typically what does it do? It stirs anger that really you have nothing good to do with that anger, that you will accomplish you or anyone else no good at all. Maybe adjust what you're ingesting in what you're posting. Because what good is it really doing you or those other people anyway? So anger disintegrates the body. It can disintegrate the community. And third of all, it can disintegrate your very wisdom or your ability to make wise choices. That's what it says in Proverbs 14:29. A patient man has great understanding, but a quick-tempered man displays folly. All of a sudden, you can't be wise anymore when you're angry. You end up being full of folly. And often when we are full of folly and we've cooled off and you think about the things you said and you think about the things you've done after you've been angry, what do you often feel like? A fool. Well, that was stupid. You know why you act like a fool? Because you were a fool. And that's the point. That's the point of the proverb. That's what it's saying when you do that. When you get angry, it distorts your view of things. It distorts your view of the situation, your view of the world, your view of others, such that you make stupidly poor and damaging choices. So anger not only disintegrates the body, disintegrates the community, hampers and your ability to make wise choices, it can damage your will, your actual intelligent or logical desire to even make good choices. That's what it says in Proverbs 19:19. A hot-tempered man must pay the penalty. If you rescue him, you will have to do it again and again and again. Of all the emotions, anger is the one most like an addictive substance. And one of the reasons that's true is because your anger often leads you to deny you even have anger or an anger problem. We can admit we're worried at times. We can admit we're sorrowful. We can admit everything else, it seems, at times. But anger hides itself. Anger is kind of like this addictive substance that we deny and we hide, but I'm not angry. I'm just sticking up for myself. I'm just getting this off my chest. Or I'm just an activist. I'm out there looking for justice. Or I'm just a direct speaker. I tell it like it is. I like to rock the boat. Unaware that behind all that, you're angry. And you're in denial. And the more angry you are, the more these problems, social and psychological problems, show up. The more you have anger and the more problems anger brings into your life, like broken relationships, and in order to keep up the fiction that you haven't done anything wrong there, you have to get more angry. Pop psychology in the 1980s, when I was in high school and in college, a lot of emphasis was on this idea of venting your anger. Express it, vent it, get it all out, kick things, break small things if you have to, do what you need to do. Articles in Psychology Today magazine shared and promoted this idea of anger management. And today, don't we kind of see that today? We're just anger, kind of this rage, just kind of this, it's free reign, where people are not kind at all. They're just like, you expect to get anger and hear anger. There's no self-control. Anger is spilled out so abundantly. If people are irritated about something, they let you know. If people are frustrated, they let you know. If people are angry about it, they let you know. It's like venting is the new way to do things. And we're all experiencing that. We're like, man, it's kind of miserable out there. And it's actually a miserable fail, this psychology experiment, if you will, because actually the proverb, not Psychology Today, got it right. And that is, the more you are angry, the more you will need to be angry. It will just feed itself. It doesn't cure the anger just to get more angry and kind of vent it out. You lose control. You smash things. You vent it on inanimate objects or people. Eventually, you're taking it out on the dog, your kids, and your spouse. So there's a hazardous dimension to anger. Well, what else do the Proverbs we read today tell us about anger? And this one's maybe a bit more surprising. It's one you probably don't typically think about. There are benefits of anger. Proverbs 16, verse 32, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who captures a city. So it's almost like the idea in Proverbs, or the idea in Bible, is not no anger, and it's certainly not blowing up anger, but it's slow anger. Because he who has slow anger is better than the mightiest. It seems to be an admirable thing. Slow anger is needed. Maybe it's beneficial. It's healthy sometimes. It is a sin to never get angry. We'll come back to that later. And it's a sin to blow up in your anger, but sometimes you need slow anger. And you may, wait a minute. It's a sin to never get angry? I thought good people didn't get angry. But here it's saying a wise man or wise woman is slow to anger. Ephesians 4, verse 25 and 26, we're probably familiar with in the New Testament. Therefore, laying aside falsehood, speaking truth, each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Be angry, and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Be angry. It's an imperative. It's saying, be angry. Whoa, wait, what's up with that? Be angry. Okay, but sin not. He doesn't say, well, some people are going to be angry eventually, but if so, just try to minimize the damage and keep it toned down a little bit. That's not what he's saying. So there must be a good dimension to this anger he's talking about here. We should be angry sometimes, but sin not. John Chrysostom, who was an early church father writing in the 300s AD, I have to go back a little while, summarized this particular aspect of understanding anger well, showing there's a positive dimension to it. He says this, he that is angry without cause sins, but he who is not angry when there is cause sins for unreasonable patience when in the hotbed of many vices. Let me read that again. He that is angry without cause sins. But he who is not angry when there is a cause, that person sins for having unreasonable patience when surrounded by so many vices and things that should be making them angry. It's really weird. So it's not don't have any anger, and it's not go blow up and vent anger, but it's slow anger. Seems to be the sweet spot. The other two ends of the spectrum are both sins. Slow anger is the way to be. Well, why might that be? Well, God, that's how God is, right? Slow to anger. Would seem to be the wise mark of a holy and wise God, in the same way with a holy and wise person. It's an attribute of God. I'm reading through Exodus right now, and Leviticus, the Psalms, kind of where I'm at in the Bible this year. And when Moses meets God on Mount Sinai in Exodus 34, and Moses says, show me your glory, basically tell me the essence, God, of who you are. God says, I will declare my name for you. And so Moses is waiting, okay, what's he going to say? And what does God say? God says, I am the Lord, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger. That's my glory. I get angry, but I'm slow about it. Our current culture, I think, has difficulty with this particular dimension of God. They want to believe in a God of love, but they can't believe in a God who gets angry about anything. But if you have a God who never gets angry, you cannot have a God of love. Because if you never, ever get angry about anything, you don't love anything. Because if you love and you see the thing that you love being threatened, you'll be angry. If you're indifferent, you're not in love. Think about how we feel when we see someone we love ravaged by unwise decisions or choices in relationships. Do we respond with benign tolerance as we might toward a total stranger? Far from it. Anger isn't the opposite of love, hate is. And the final iteration of that hate is indifference. The more a father loves his son, the more angry he is at the son's drunkenness or his lying or his being whatever, a trait or something dramatic, right? He hates those things in the son. He's angry about those. He's not happy about those. And if we as flawed, self-centered people can feel this much pain about someone else we see succumbing to that and have anger over the condition they're in or at the things they're getting involved in they shouldn't be, how much more a perfect God who made them would feel some anger and frustration at those sins. So I think here's what he's saying is true love gets angry. But I think we can even be stronger than that. Bear with me. Love in its uncorrupted origin is simply love moved to deal with a threat towards someone that you love. So something's threatening someone you love. Love in its uncorrupted origin is a move to deal with that threat to the thing that you love. Anger, in its original and purest form, the way it would have been in Eden in the perfect world, is love in motion toward that which is threatening what you love. Same thing. Anger and love. If something you really love is threatened, you get angry at the thing that's threatening it. And that's where anger wants to pulverize that thing. That's where anger wants to disintegrate. It wants to disintegrate, get rid of, remove the thing that's endangering that which you love. So anger can be viewed as just love in motion, if you will, when something or someone you love is under threat. So if you and I look at the things that we get most angry about, you can kind of identify the things that you love most. You'll find answers to the things your heart loves most, the things your heart, has the most compassion toward, are the things that get you a little, I'm feeling something on the inside here. And so often Jesus, who was perfect, he's shown being angry. Angry at the money changers, angry at the religious leaders, angry at the tomb of Lazarus. And many more times when we say, well, Jesus, why are you getting angry? Because he's a man of love. He's a man of love, a pure love, perfect love. So he gets angry but sins not. So there's a destructive power in anger, but there's also a good benefit to anger potentially as well. All right, which raises this question. How does anger go wrong? Which seems like that's what happens most of the time. Proverbs 24:28. Do not testify against your neighbor without cause or use your lips to deceive. Do not say, I'll do to him as he has done to me. I'll pay that man back for what he did. So in this verse, somebody is really angry at someone, right? I'm going to do this guy back. He's fired up. Something's going on. But in verse 28, it says that in spite of the fact that you're angry, this person does not have a just cause for his anger, which leads you to believe that while there are just causes and then there are unjust causes. Now, how could that happen? How could you have an anger that's disproportionate to the cause or inappropriate for the cause? Well, here's one way that this happens. It happens because we've talked about this before. Our anger gets disordered, just like our loves get disordered. It's St. Augustine said our biggest problem in life is we have disordered loves. Disordered loves mean there are many things in this world that are good. Your family, your job, your spouse, your accomplishments, your mate, whatever. Those are good things. But we turn those things in this world that are good, when we turn them into ultimate things, we have disordered loves. They're out of alignment. They're out of priority. We don't just love things that are good, but we look to those good things. This is one of the ways they get disordered. We look to those good things to give us happiness or significance or self-worth or security. Things that only God is supposed to be doing. And we can disorder our loves that way. And when good things turn into ultimate things, when we love good things too much or more than God, that's when our emotions get absolutely distorted and upended. So, for example, if you break up with someone you love, you're going to be profoundly sad. But if you break up with someone you love and you're so devastated that you maybe want to take your own life, that's when you've turned that thing you loved into an ultimate thing when it should have never been an ultimate thing. You've turned that person or your need for sexual desire, whatever it is, into an absolute. I got to have it. It's the only way I'll be happy. When that happens, your emotions will totally go over the top and they get highly magnified and they become completely uncontrollable and completely disproportionate. Now, I think that part we understand. The same thing happens the flip way with anger. It's true that anger was just originally a form of love. And just like disordered love creates disordered anger, our anger can get disordered as well. There's an appropriate way to do it and an inappropriate way to be angry. Here's some of the ways anger gets disordered, how it goes wrong. It goes wrong in its cause. It goes wrong, it gets disordered in its cause. So here's what I mean by that. Why is it that we get so angry when we're snubbed or overlooked in some way, shape, or form? Why do we get so much more angry than a simple snub or overlooked or I didn't get the compliment or the thank you than we are about the injustice, say, to a group of people in another part of the world or city? Why? Why do we get so angry about a small little thing? It's because we have a disordered anger problem. We care too much about things we shouldn't care so much about, and we care too little about things we should care a whole lot more about. That's disordered anger. There's nothing wrong with being upset or angry to a degree if somebody slights you or your reputation. I get it, right? But why do we get 10 or 100 times more angry about it than some horrible, violent injustice being done to a person or group of people in our city, our world, whatever? It's because we have disordered lives. There should be things that prompt just a little bit of anger, while other things should prompt far greater anger. And far too often, we're more concerned with our causes, my reputation, my cause of status, my cause of significance, my cause of security, than we are for causes that we should be, ought to be, much more concerned about. So causes is one way, misplaced, that our anger goes wrong. Proportion, this is probably an obvious one. Our anger not only gets distorted because of the causes, it's distorted in terms of proportion. It's either far too great or over the top or uncontrollable when what was warranted was something smaller, or the reverse of that. It's too small when it should be something we feel much greater passion about. And third way that anger goes wrong is the goal. The goal gets misplaced. Loving anger, as one preacher put it, always seeks to do a surgical strike on the evil. Let me explain. If you truly love, say, your teenage or adult child, and you see them in some kind of folly or being a jerk, like I was a jerk and my parents saw me, you want to what? You want them to stop, get rid of the folly, you want to destroy the folly, not the child, of course. We understand that. You want to get the full out of the child, but you don't want to harm the child. That's an ordered love. That's the way anger should be. But in disordered anger, you don't go after the problem, you go after the person. You don't just want to do restitution and justice, you want vengeance. You don't want a surgical strike, you want to slash and burn. And so our anger can go wrong when the cause, the proportion of the goal are off or misplaced. Then we end up being foolish, not wise. And the last thing about how anger can go awry, there are just little things that bug us every day, little things, level one things, say, that make us angry. But there are bigger things, letdowns, betrayals, injustices that you haven't forgotten, and maybe you haven't totally forgiven yet. And we'll call those level 2 issues. The more level 2 issues you have that aren't resolved, they spill over into you having more level 1 issues in your anger. And now even smaller and smaller things that shouldn't be getting you angry are now getting me angry. And I'm just become this sort of festoon of anger. It's under there. Boy, you just prick the surface in the wrong way. Festoon, is it a spittoon, a festoon? I don't know. Wrong word. But yeah, it just festers in a bad way. And if you haven't totally forgiven that person, you're going to be more quick to be angry at the next person. That's what I'm saying here, right? You'll take slights more easily, more readily if you haven't resolved your level 2, and it becomes these small little level 1 issues. And if you're a member of a particular race or class and you were wronged by someone in a particular race or class and you haven't totally forgiven that creates an anger level that can be generalized then to just an entire categories and classes of people. It should be clear to us all that anger is the bottom of a lot of our problems in the world. Many of our psychological problems. We typically don't admit it. This isn't something we typically walk into a coffee time with a friend. Man, can I just talk about, I got some anger issues. Let's talk about it. But anger leads to wars, oppression, and leads so much misery in this world. So what can we do? This is where we'll finish up. What can we do to help us with our anger? How do we help and heal and make it more whole and make it more wise and make it more godlike? Okay, first thing, admit it. A wise woman or man is not no anger or not blow up anger. They're slow anger. We got to be smart, though, here. We got to be in touch with it. You got to be aware of it so you're not just punishing people when you're angry. And part of that is just an awareness, knowing who you are. Admitting your anger. And even if you're the victim, even if you've been wrong, to admit, even in that situation, that I'm angry, it's an act of vulnerability. It's an act of weakness to come to somebody. I had to do this last year on several occasions in one situation. Come to them and say, you've made me angry. And I got to sort this out. But the very fact that I was able to say that, I was hurt, I was angry, I was just frustrated, I was confused, gives the possibility of reconciliation, because in admitting my weakness, then they could admit their weakness. And that's exactly what happened. The second thing we need to do is we need to analyze our anger. That's what Proverbs 29 says. I'll do to him as he has done to me. I'll pay that man back for what he did. Now, who's this person talking to? Do not say, I'll do to him as he has done to me. I'll pay that man back for what he did do. Who's this person talking to? There's nobody else mentioned in the proverb here. They're talking to themselves. This is self-talk. This is self-talk. And here's what I believe the implication of this verse is. What makes you so angry is not what's happened to you sometimes, but it's what you tell yourself about what's happened to you. The actual incident somehow gets far removed from how we're analyzing and interpreting and trying to make sense of it all and explain it all. And many times our anger comes from what we believed happened, not from actually what happened or what the person intended to happen. So when we get angry, we got to analyze what really happened. Why is this so important to me? Why has this got me in fired up mode? Why am I in defense mode now? Am I defending my reputation? Am I defending the church's reputation? Am I like, what? We got to do this analysis. And sometimes we'll be embarrassed because oftentimes we'll see it comes back to my own pride, my own self-esteem, my own ego. Think about being at a restaurant. Here's an example. Man, I've done things like this so often. And I'm sitting down, and I'm waiting on service, and service is slow. And I'm like, I got 20 minutes from walking in the door before I need to be out of here to get to my next thing. And wow, they're slow. They're waiting on everybody else. They disappear in the back. Where is my waitress? And I'm getting angry, and I'm getting frustrated. I'm not going to have enough time to eat. The issue in that scenario often for me isn't how slow they are. It's I didn't plan enough time in my day to have enough time to eat and not freak out. I'm going to be late, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to be late for that other appointment. I'm going to look foolish. I'm going to look irresponsible. I'm going to look inconsiderate for that next thing. And I'm just getting more and more mad at the waiter. But what I'm really doing is I'm defending me in my poor planning. I'm more concerned about egg in my face for the next appointment than my eggs coming on time. So we need to analyze what is getting us riled up. And then we finally need to transform. And this is where we end. You got to transform your anger. Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Well, that's good input on how to transfer and transform your anger. And then Proverbs 25:21, if your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Now, of all the wisdom literature in the world, this is over the top. I mean, compared to the Egyptian wisdom literature, Sumerian wisdom literature from the Far East, all of them talk about self-control, which is a dimension of what we're talking about today. But that last proverb is far beyond self-control. This is not just saying, just don't take revenge on your enemies. It's saying, go save your enemies, doggone it. I mean, food and drink. I mean, like, keep them alive. Save them. This is so over the top. Now, how is that even remotely possible? I'm frustrated at the waitress. How in the world do I do this to an enemy and be gentle and kind and nice to them? How's that even possible? It's been said that the real changes in your life don't happen when you get married. They happen when you have children. I've heard from couples who discipled us years ago and from many since and now live the experience. And they said, if you haven't had children yet, it's really just like being on a long date because the real changes don't happen until you have children. Once you have children, it's sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. You don't do 3/4 of the things you used to be able to do that you really like to do. I mean, everything revolves around the kids. You make all these sacrifices, and at some point, that kid becomes a teenager. And maybe you get into you get into an argument at some point once with your teen, and they turn on you, and they say something like this: you don't love me. You hate me. Maybe I hate you too, or you've ruined my life. You've never done anything for me. And when that happens, there is nothing more painful than when they say that and you're like, are you freaking kidding me, is what you're thinking, right? This is one person that you've sacrificed and sacrificed in all the imperfect ways, but you've done, and they look you in the eye and they say something so painful, and you're like, that is the most unjustified, disproportionate, and disordered response and rage you just gave. What are you doing? And it just hurts so deeply. But there's a huge test in it at these moments and at this point in this illustration. There's a huge test for the parent. There's only a few things you can do. Number one, you can withdraw. Stay away, hurts too much, I can't take it, I don't like conflict, just let them go on their merry way, and whatever self-destructive things they get into, whatever, they're going to learn their lesson, God will teach them. That's one. Number two, you can go after them. Guns a-blazing. You're going to take out your pain by inflicting it back, and you rage back, and you end up what? Alienating them and pushing them away. Or you can do what I said earlier, surgical strike. That's kind of I don't have a better word for that. That just sounds kind of too strong, but I think you know what I mean here. So just know what I mean, not what I'm saying, okay? You can do a surgical strike to save them and preserve the relationship. Remain calm. Share a gentle word. That's what the Proverbs said. You can speak the truth. Be slow to anger. Tamp it down. Okay, it's coming up too much. It's too fast, out of proportion. Too worried about you and your image. No, get rid of all that. It's not about that. You can have a talk. Hey, sweetie, this is how it's going to be. I know you're angry, but, keep some calm there and just absorb the pain of their crazy talk without paying it back. That's what we're called to do. And in so doing, you can save your child and you can save your relationship. You got to come in close, even in your pain, and absorb the barbs. You can stay mad at the sin, the folly, whatever, the stupid in your kid. Maybe this is too strong, but you know what I'm saying. But love the kid. We get that. Okay. So here's where we end. Do you realize what God has done? We were mad at him. You don't want to admit you're mad at God because people are in anger. Like we've been talking about, always deny it. But we want this, we want that, didn't get it. We wanted this, that, we didn't get it. We had this dream, that didn't happen. We're mad. We get mad. We get mad at God, and we're in denial. And the proof that we're mad at him is the most unjustified, the most disordered, most hurtful possible rage that when God became human, when he became vulnerable, what we do? We mocked him. We beat him. We tortured him. We were angry at him. And what did he do? He didn't withdraw. He didn't come in guns a-blazing. He went to the cross. And on the cross, Jesus told us the truth. He absorbed some of our disordered rage without paying it back on us. Remember in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus said, take this cup from me. But God said, nope, you got to drink the cup. Jesus said, okay, I'll drink the cup. What's the cup? Everywhere in the Old Testament, the cup is the cup of God's anger. We deserved his anger because we were ruining one another and ruining ourselves, even our own bones. But on the cross, Jesus not only took our anger, which he didn't deserve, he took the anger that we deserve without paying us back and smashing it in our face. But rather using the gentlest words, as the proverb would instruct, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they're doing. And so we see in Jesus Christ, him taking our disordered rage at infinite cost to himself. When we see the ultimate, if you will, surgical strike, he loved the sinner and hated the sin. He forgave our sins so he could embrace the sinner, the ultimate surgical strike. And if we can be softened by that knowledge, maybe even stunned into silence with what Jesus did for us, then when other people wrong us, we can do the same. We can say, I've been wronged by this, but I've wronged God at an infinite cost. And he responded with cosmic gentleness that should free us to do the same. And that's this final proverb that we read. Heap burning coals on his head and the Lord will reward you. That's what he's talking about. That's what it means to heap those coals. When wronged, respond with cosmic gentleness. Not comic. Too often we're comic. Yeah, that's gentle. No, that was not gentleness. No, you got that wrong. We'll end with MLK quote from a sermon that he preached that I think highlights this point, and we're done. Jesus said, "Love your enemies, that they may be children of your Father who is in heaven." Of course, you say all this about loving enemies is not practical. Life is a matter of getting even, of hitting back, of dog eat dog. Well, maybe in some distant utopia that idea will work, but not in the hard, cold world in which we live. My friends, we followed the so-called practical way for a long time now. Time is cluttered with wreckage of communities which surrender to hatred and violence. We're going to follow another way. Listen to this. We will not abandon our righteous efforts. With every ounce of strength, we will continue to rid the nation of the incubus of segregation, but we will not in the process relinquish our privilege and our obligation to love. While abhorring segregation, we will love the segregationist. This is the only way to build the beloved community with our most bitter opponents. We say we shall meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we will continue to love you. We cannot obey your unjust laws because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as it is to cooperate with good. But throw us in jail, we will still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators of violence into our community and beat us, and we will still love you. But be assured that we will wear you down. May we adopt a similar attitude, praying that God will free us from our disordered angers, making each of us wise like him, right? Slow to anger, angry at the right things and in the right ways, and through it all, abounding in love. Amen? Amen. We'll end there. Usually we talk it over when we're done, but it's late. Thank you for being here. But give this some thought this week. Admit, analyze, and transform whatever dimension of anger is in you that's unholy, and let God have all the glory. Amen. Love you guys.